BRN, where educators share what works.
If I wanted to integrate generative AI into my classrooms in a very meaningful way, and I wanted to do it deliberately and as Caroline said, show the working, you track them as they use it, what could I do next week? What tips, tools, tricks could I pull to get those students to show me their work given something as generic as ChatGPT straight up? Good morning, everybody. How are you all?
Doing great. Good morning.
I know I say this every time we meet, but I was really looking forward to this conversation today. Starting to sound like a broken record, so I think I just look forward to all of your very good company. But specifically, the underlying theme of a lot of the conversations we have been having and that educators have been having around generative AI seem to distill down to the idea of accountability. That's accountability on the part of teachers and instructors in choosing the right tool, working with their administration to integrating that tool deliberately into their curriculum. Also accountability on the part of the students to use the tool the way that it's being presented to them, to not use it for more nefarious purposes. So there's this really large pool of, I guess you would call it setup, of how you go into the use of AI, and doing it in a very deliberate and high integrity way. But what we haven't really talked a lot about yet, and what I'd love to talk about today, is the other side of that, showing the work of using the AI, tracking students' use of AI, and probably much more importantly, assessing their use of it so that we can guide and coach and correct and mold them as digital citizens using these tools. So does that sound right to you? Is that a conversation that we in education should be having? And if so, what are some strategies? Let's brainstorm and come up with some ways that we can do that, track and assess student use of AI.
Well, I think it's a fantastic topic because even on our grade card, I have a section that is all about work habits and how are students doing in the classroom. And this conversation here has prompted me to look at adding student use of AI as a work habit and being able to assess how are they doing with the tools that are provided to them. Are they using it ethically? Are they engaging with it? Are they willing to engage with it? Then, being able to bring students into that conversation as well to let them know this is what I'm seeing. So I'm excited to have the conversation, but it just prompted me to think through adding this specific thing as a part of our grade card.
Yeah, what we would call in higher ed as a competency. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great conversation, and as Dan always shows us, and Caroline also, it's about the conversation with the student, with the tool, with the teacher. I think it was, great, now I can't think of her name. She always said connecting, right, student to student, student to teacher, but connecting that content to the student, I think, is also so important.
Definitely, yes. I like the idea of showing the workings and how important that is, but I think that goes back way before AI. It brings me back to my maths classes where, you only get half the points for getting the correct answer. The other half the points are for showing the working, because the teacher wants to know what's going through your head to see that you've understood it. I'm thinking about driving tests where you're, actually verbally saying, check mirrors, look left, look right, do this. So it is another way of showing the workings. I think maybe with, shall we say, traditional education, we focus so much on final exams and tests that we've lost, in a way, the importance of showing the workings. And I think that AI may bring us back to this a bit. I was thinking about this a lot during COVID when we went online, and I was really concerned that my students were not going to be engaging as much, not going to be interacting as much in the lesson. And I found one of the ways to really keep them engaged was to show them the workings of what I could see. So if they were working on Google Slides or Google Docs, I actually showed them, I stopped and I said, look, I can see who's written what. I can see what percentage a person has interacted with this document. And I found through showing those workings, it really increased. I had very high engagement during my classes because it was very student-centered. Now, I think with AI, it's just taking this a step further. So now you have some of the AI, especially the walled garden AIs like school AI, do show you the workings as an instructor. You can see what the students have been doing, what they've been thinking, the process they've gone through as they're using those. And I think that's amazing for accountability for the students. So of course, just like I did with my students during COVID, I showed them what I could see as the instructor and what I was expecting from them. With these walled gardens like school AI, the same, showing the workings, me as the teacher to the students. I want to show them what I can see, what I'm expecting from them, so that helps. And then they can be assessed, like on grade cards or whatever. They can be assessed on how they are using the tool, as well as the product that's coming out at the end. And a bonus on this would be one of the challenges I've had with using so many AI tools at the moment is the accountability. I have to provide documentation at the end of the semester. Now, traditionally, that would be exam papers. Well, I don't have that. We've been using all these different tools, AI tools. And if students are using their own individual accounts, bar screenshots, certain links, it's very difficult to show the workings, to show the accountability. So I think one of the biggest things we need to think about now with regards to our choice of AI tools is, are these walled garden tools? Can the instructor track the workings? Can the instructor show the students the workings? Should we be assessing on this? And then once we have that, that also solves the issue of accountability to administration, because you also have that data that backs up what the students have been doing. So to me, show the workings is really a big part of what we need within the tools that we choose to use.
Caroline, I really want to zero in on this. You talked about the steps you would have to go through to get a driver's license. There's the written exam, but then there's the driving exam. So it's great that you know the rules of the road, and we can assess that. But you can be a terrible driver and still know all the rules of the road. So we're making sure that there's a two-part exam, because we're entrusting 16-year-old kids with a 2,000-pound vehicle speeding at 65 miles an hour down a road and trusting that they can do that in the middle of winter. AI is no more or no less dangerous of a tool in the hands of a child. We have to be able to ensure that they are equipped to handle the tool properly, and not only that they know how to use it, but hold them accountable for their actual use of it. I think that having the back-end data of a student's use of AI is critical when we're talking about students and the use of AI.
But let's talk about logistics, because not every instructor has school AI. So if we all agree that this is critical, showing the work is critical, just like it was for math and for driving, how do we do that? If I'm an instructor, working in my own little bubble, and I've integrated ChatGPT into my classroom, but I want it to be free for my students, and I don't have institutional support for a site license for a better tool, how would I allow my students to show me the work?
That's a really good question. How do you do that when you don't have the tools, you don't have the correct, for each state is a different law? It's a good question. What do you do so that every kid can still be exposed to the tool, as teachers always do, which is horrible? But we spend our own money, play around with it ourselves, and then get some of that data so that we can show our administrators the importance of why we would want to purchase this, or maybe reach out to a Dan or a Caroline and have them share what they've been doing and how it's been successful, and to express to the administration the importance of the next level of AI tool, and then why we want to purchase this.
Well, and Julie, I think that that's a really important conversation to have. And when you go to have that conversation and you approach an administrator and say, look, I think this tool has value. It's not because it's new and shiny. It's because you've researched it, you know how to talk about it, and you know how to point out its use in the classroom. When you go and have those conversations, and when you can show that this can go beyond your classroom, because there, like you said, there are some things that are great for science, there are some things that are great for math. But when you look at AI, we know that it can infiltrate all of those different disciplines. If you can show how this particular tool can be used in this environment, and that environment, all of a sudden you now have the attention of an administrator who is looking at how to implement AI because they know that it's coming. They know that it's on the radar. You have now helped the process by doing a lot of that research yourself.
Then maybe one thing to add to the conversation about assessing is not doing this on your own, but what professional learning network can you join? Where can you get that research from? What organization, local or international or national, can help you with the research? Because there are volunteers, as we all know, in all different organizations who will spend that time playing around with things and then, help give you the assessment tools or the research behind. So I think it's important I agree with you, Dan, I think when you're bringing that research up, you're adding some conversations from others in the field and some examples, because there's always going to be a school that's ahead of you and there's always going to be a school that's behind you. Go get those examples and bring those in along with your research.
The other voices part, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
I'm using other voices. I'm not pitching these tools to administration at my university. My students are. They're investigating them, and they're actually up with administration, with the rector, with deans. They are pitching what they're learning, and they're sharing their experiences. And so that's another voice that I really like included, because they're more aware of what's going on. They're more aware of how it's affecting their learning. So I think the student voice is also critical.
It's interesting that you say that, because I remember when I was a lower school tech facilitator, and I helped to advocate for middle school students to do Minecraft after school. And of course, this was, oh my gosh, no. But the students were the voice behind, and even showed examples of how Minecraft could be used as part of project-based learning in their different subjects. And you're right, it was their voice. And honestly, I didn't even know how to use Minecraft at the time. I was just the facilitator and the adult in the room, and they taught me so much.
Yeah.
But it was their voice and their research behind what was happening that really made it come to life.
So I still need help, though, because I am a faculty member at a teaching-intensive university. So we put a very high premium on delivering a high-quality educational product to our students. But I'm a faculty member, so there are scholarly expectations of me. I need to stay research active. I need to be presenting at conferences and publishing. I have student advisees that I need to coach through their curriculum. There are many committees that I serve on. So I got a pretty narrow bandwidth that's at 110% already. And exploring new tools, gathering evidence, going to administration, it's just not something that I have the time or the wherewithal for. So if I wanted to integrate generative AI into my classrooms in a very meaningful way, and I wanted to do it deliberately and as Caroline said, show the working, you track them as they use it, what could I do next week? What tips, tools, tricks could I pull to get those students to show me their work, given something as generic as ChatGPT straight up? I mean, screenshots of the work that they're doing as they're doing it, or maybe they create a video of their actual integration, of their interaction with AI. But then I'm thinking from an assessment perspective, having to watch all those videos or look at all those screenshots, we're talking about a much heavier lift in terms of grading.
Tom, it's a valid point. It sounds like a logistical nightmare to try to figure out exactly what's been produced by AI and what was produced by the student. That's why I think a lot of even what we ask our students to produce has to change. Because if we're just focused primarily on written expression, you don't know whether that 5-paragraph essay about a character analysis in literature was written by the student or written by AI. So what we're asking our students to do to express their mastery of content and their understanding of content has to change. For me, when I have students engage with content through project-based learning, they actually have to produce something with that content. And that content typically is not a written essay. It's a product. What are you making? How can you express your understanding individually? There aren't too many, especially for me, middle school students who have a deep passion for an essay. They'd much rather make board games, or they'd much rather do Minecraft projects or comic books or something along those lines. And they can use generative AI for all of that. And that's perfectly fine, and that's actually encouraged.
Dan, what I heard was you were expressing the fact that students in middle school don't particularly care for performing through essays, but more tangible things like Minecraft or making games. Okay. So I remember when teaching college, I would ask students to do presentations. So why couldn't a student do a presentation on what they did, what they learned, and show some clips from their own account of how they use ChatGPT? And there's still a rubric that guides what they said, what they did. So that way, Tom is not, you're right, because the idea is we're not trying to add more things for teachers to assess. But if maybe students do a quick presentation as opposed to a small one-on-one conference with the teacher, but do a quick presentation as to where they are, what they're learning, where they started, where they've moved to. That could be one form of showing assessment.
Yeah, I could run with that. Caroline, you've been doing tons of work with students and AI. What tools do you have up your sleeve?
For accountability, I'm struggling with it, trying to put my dossiers together for the end of the semester. I'm trying to download, recordings of voice clonings and all kinds of different things. I'm ending up with a digital folder with links. I don't know if it's going to be accepted or not. It's the first time I've ever had anything as complex as this. And with the very last lesson where we were using Obsidian, which we should have screencasted that's the only way you can show it because it really works in 3D. It's an information retrieval system. I don't know how I'm going to be accountable for that. So that's my challenge for me over the next semester, is to come up with a system. And a lot of that will depend on the tools that we choose to use.
You report to the institution what your students learned and how you documented it?
Exactly. Well, it's not the institution even. It is the institution, but it's governed by the Council of Higher Education. And those standards currently are not in line with the AI tools that we're using. So I'm going to find out very soon.
And Caroline, I've run into similar issues because I have students who, they want to use like a MetaQuest 2 or a MetaQuest 3. And so when they're designing something in virtual reality, how do they present that? So one of the things we've had to figure out is how to record what they're creating and then do like a voiceover on that creation and then submit that through a program like flip.com where they can do virtual presentations. And then I have, links to presentations that I can assess at my leisure, but it's also something that we could present to the class. But you're right, those artifacts, especially when they're digital, are harder to present.
So, Dan, what you've described is, which we've talked about previously, is this kind of AI smashing system. We're all smashing different digital and AI systems together to get the result that we want, that we have to hand in. I think what's more of these AI tools are, once education companies get more involved in this, I think they need to be listening to people like us about how to bring this all together under one umbrella. But at the moment, we're just smashing it all together.
So can I ask a crazy question, but I think I know the answer? Do we as a group feel it's still important to introduce these tools as opposed to waiting to find out how to assess them before introducing?
You mean like what is the order of consideration? Should the ability to track student use be part of our vetting process? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
100% yes.
Yeah, I think for someone like me who's dabbling and interested in integrating and embedding AI into my classes more and more, I have to say, in one way, I'm very glad to be having this conversation before I went all in, because it does give me the context of recognizing what's important from the tool, not only for my students' interaction with it, but also for me as an instructor.
I'm in a slightly different situation again because my courses are about AI and using AI. So I'm not teaching a subject through AI. The questions that we're posing, I'm jotting these down as we speak, the questions we're posing in this chat, I might actually throw to my students in the next course, which is, okay, we've used all these different tools because I want them to find the tools. That's part of the course itself. I want them to find them to assess them. So I might throw this in as part of their assessment as well, is if you were me as the instructor who's held accountable to these standards, how would you document? And let's see what they come up with.
So should administrators also hold teachers accountable for how they're using AI? Because right now, when it comes to whether teachers use it or not, there are some teachers who are very much like, I'm not using that. And there are teachers who are like, bring it on. Then there are teachers who are generating a lot of content, whether that's lesson plans, reworking, reading material, and they're using AI for all of it. Do administrators need to then assess how their staff is using the AI tools?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can't argue against it. Administrators have their hands full with generative AI in general, but I think they need to assess that their instructors are using it responsibly and deliberately. They also need to decide how they're going to incentivize the use, right? Is it going to be punitive for instructors that don't use it, or incentivized for instructors that do? That's a whole nut for administrators to crack as well, for sure.
I think it's going to be vital that no matter what, there is, one, the expectation that it is being used, and that there's accountability for how it's used.
What I'm struck by in this conversation, what's hitting me square in the face, is the infancy of this technology in general, right? We because it overtook society so quickly, I think we often forget how new this technology still is. It's new for administrators to cope with, it's new for instructors to integrate, it's new for students to experience. And I think what we're feeling are those infancy stage growing pains of a very new and powerful technology that's overtaking our lives, our profession, quicker than we ever anticipated. It's a conversation we have to keep having, I think, right? We have to keep talking about assessment, student assessment of work with AI, assessing the final product, assessing the process, and being assessed as educators as we use this technology. I have a feeling we're going to come back to this topic a couple more times. I think this is a conversation that's going to keep on going. Does that sound right to all of you?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, all of you have a wonderful week in the classroom, and I look forward to meeting you the next time we come out here to have another enriching conversation about who knows what. Have a great week, everyone.
See links to all the resources mentioned in the show notes. And look for the new documentary, Blindsided by AI, premiering on June 24th.